business partners and fellow detox specialists. I apologize, I'm in my home today instead of the clinic because I just had a baby and I'm just staying low. But we have Carrie, Tidwell, Mary Beth, and Rita Jean, and myself, and we are all regenerative detox specialists, all work with clinical herbalism and iridology and a plethora of other things. And we're very passionate about helping people heal. And hold on one second. There we go. We're very passionate about helping people heal and helping people find resources and solutions to an array of health issues. And this specific topic we found really important to talk about trauma. And I think, you know, globally we are experiencing trauma right now in just more ways than we understand. And then we also are experiencing this social justice and this Black Lives Matter and all of the things that are happening right now is such an integral part of understanding how deep trauma goes. And so today we're not going to get into like all of the things that can create trauma, but I really want to offer solutions and understanding how trauma plays out. So I was actually, you know, introduced to the idea of trauma basically being a physical body response when Carrie, Tidwell, and I were in Bali together. Was the first time I had heard of that. And if anybody wants to chime in at all, you're welcome to. But one of the things that I've always noticed is like, you know, therapy is great for some people, but I had always found myself saying like, I understand what I'm feeling. Like I'm in touch with what I'm feeling. My question is, how do I get it out of my body? Right? How do I get it to leave the physical body so that it stops affecting you? And so a lot of our approach and a lot of the belief about trauma is in the Western world, it is believed that trauma is incurable, but only treatable. And I'll explain why they came to that finding. And then we'll explain like how it actually is curable. So that's one fun part. And then the second part is that we also, we approach trauma from a therapy standpoint. So it's like a psychological standpoint. So we're always talking about, you know, like going through talk therapy or going through, maybe you are going through something where they do emotional release therapy or the techniques where they work on your brain. And that's all great, but actually trauma is not a psychological issue. So that was really surprising to me when I started digging into this research. And so you will all receive a follow-up email with the link to the resources that I've studied. And I've been studying with Peter Levine, and he's a trauma specialist, and he's been in practice for 45 years. And as we know in our process of regenerative detoxification and understanding the body, a big part of our deep understanding is understanding our species. And so studying the animals and studying our animal, we are an animal as well. And so this all really tied in and makes sense to me, because that is the approach that Peter Levine also took, was understanding humans as animals and understanding how animals process trauma. And then putting that together and realizing how we have gotten to where we are. So I first want to start by basically saying that trauma is, you know, people associate trauma as like, oh, an experience that was traumatic, but that's actually not what trauma is. So trauma is actually the later response inside your body. The event itself doesn't necessarily have to create trauma. So whether you have been through, you know, something scary as a child, like losing your mom in the grocery store, is actually trauma, because as a child, we know that our safety and well-being is from our parents because we aren't able to care for ourselves. So that can be a really traumatic experience. Obviously, trauma comes in all levels. Everyone's entitled to their own experience. And I just wanted to also say, like, you know, we're not, everybody is entitled to feel that they may have had a traumatic experience, and it doesn't need to compare to anybody else's experience. So trauma is very personal. It can happen in any state. It can happen because you didn't feel safe. It can happen, honestly, you could have, women can have a traumatic, almost rape response to a pelvic exam that was rough or intrusive. The body processes it the same. So I'm just inviting you to be really open with yourself and maybe to examine areas in where you may have experienced trauma. And then we're going to go through a few tools on how to process that trauma. So to start basically thinking about animals is the way that Peter Levine started studying and processing was saying, how are animals processing trauma? And he noticed that after they would be hunted, or, there was somebody hunting them, so their prey was after them, and they're going through this running process. Well, after the animal is safe, same when they would capture animals, after the animal is safe, the animal would actually sit down and tremble, like for several minutes. They would go through a process called shaking. And at first it just seems like there's it's just like a random, no rhythm to it or method shaking. And after several minutes of shaking, the animal would take usually 3 deep breaths. So like, and then when it was finished, you would see this very clear. The animal would shake, take 3 deep breaths, and then get up. And the trauma then was released from their body. And so the beauty in that is that the animal always processes that way. Every single time, every single experience. And people that were studying animals and then actually took them and captivated them in a safe way to kind of get this research, said that they actually could not release them back into the wild if they didn't have this response, or they would die. So understanding that, a lot of us are operating in this trauma state because we have not gone through this sort of a release. And that's a really important part of really starting the process of healing. So animals have this instinct to release trauma. And when they actually zoomed in on the video of this, so like it looked like random shaking, they saw it was actually the running movement. Like they were finishing their escape in their body. So they had to finish the process of escaping the lion that was chasing them, and then take 3 deep breaths when they knew that they were safe. And that allowed the response that happens to your body. So we all know about fight or flight, which is the sympathetic nervous system being activated when we're scared. So that is the beginning of your defense mechanism to being saved. So it's like how a mom can lift something insanely heavy off their child and she's not an Olympian, right? It's because what happens when we feel danger or fear is we go into the sympathetic nervous system, our fight and flight response gets activated, which floods our muscles with excess blood so that we're stronger. It floods our body with adrenaline and cortisol, so we have steroids in our system for survival so that we can run for long periods of time, which we wouldn't normally have flooding our system. And so this specific response is very healthy. However, when we have our body get stuck in this response, this is where it becomes unhealthy. So specifically, I want to talk about something called kindling. And I'm going to just take a little peek at my notes to make sure I stay on track, because this is a big subject. But so the process of kindling is actually, so once your nervous system is stimulated, say an event happens, like something, I'm going to give a simple example, like you fell on your knee or you missed a step and fell down. That might not trigger the nervous system right away, but through repeated, say like, you fell 3 times that week on that stupid step, right? Okay, so now the nervous system has been activated. 2 to 3 times is really all it takes. And this gets turned on. So basically when kindling happens is the nervous system believes that it is in danger, and the kindled response comes from the amygdala. And the amygdala is the part of the brain that responds to fear. And so this part of the brain stays active and says, we're not safe. And so when we get into a kindled state, we actually stay frozen in fear. And that we don't realize that we could actually be operating on our day-to-day rhythm, even though you may not be feeling that like thumping of the heartbeat or the shaking of your hands. You can actually be operating in your world with the amygdala activated in this kindled state of fear. And this is what is happening ancestrally and in many cultures. And we're experiencing this in Black Lives Matter, and we're experiencing this in, a lot of different areas showing up. People are in a lot of fear over COVID. And so we can actually be operating constantly in this fear state. So once this is stimulated, there's nothing much happens. But after continuous exposure, then we get into this kindled process. So the sympathetic nervous system is activated, the fight or flight response occurs, the amygdala stays on, and then your body is in this state. Now there's a second part that I want to talk about, and it's called quenching. So quenching, Quention, is a certain type of stimulation that's actually directed at the amygdala that can deactivate this process for our body. So basically, I'll repeat that. Quenching is a certain type of stimulation directed at the amygdala that can actually turn off the kindled state, and that's that stuck in fear state. So this is the part where we realize that trauma is reversible. So the study around the kindled state is the study that a lot of Western doctors have found, like, oh, they're stuck in this trauma, and that's why the belief is that trauma is incurable but treatable. And the treatment approaches are usually through giving anxiety medications or this or that, which we know on a regenerative side just suppresses our adrenal function deeper and is not the solution. But that is where their perspective is coming from, is they understand this kindled state, and as they study the brain, you can actually see that the amygdala is activated. So it is a fair assumption that, okay, we can't heal this trauma because this part of their brain is just stuck active. So all we can do is treat that problem. But the quenching process, through directly stimulating the amygdala with almost the same type of experience, it can be replaying the experience and going through the process of healing it. And then this quenching process actually deactivates the amygdala and gets rid of the kindled experience. So now we know that trauma is curable, and that's amazing. And so this goes to say also, you don't have to go through every traumatic experience you've ever had as a child, because it will never be done, right? Or as an adult. But there's several things that you can do. And I highly recommend that after this class, especially while you're motivated about it, take some time this week to listen to the book and to go through all of the exercises, because there's so many. And he walks you through visualizations and ways to heal this. And then also really finding a buddy when you're processing trauma, because we actually feel safe, even though we kind of like will feel embarrassed if we fall. We actually feel safety in community or partnership, because we're actually not meant, we're like pack animals. We're not meant to be alone in the world. So a lot of the things that we do in this world are wrong. We're like, 18, get out, get an apartment, live alone, right? All these things. But we actually really thrive and feel safe with a partner. So when you are processing trauma, I recommend talking to a best friend that might be interested, talking to your partner that might be interested in being with you through this process, because you cannot tell what's going to come up for you. And so it could be minor, it could be major, right? You could start in a trembling process, and you may need to seek deeper help with a trauma therapist. But the really powerful thing that I really came to the conclusion of with this book is that we actually most of the time can process it ourselves. So most of the time, this is an innate thing that's in our body, but somehow we've forgotten. And that's the problem. So the biological physiology is basically, I'm going to read my notes. So biological psychology is currently the means of treating trauma, but this is a physiological issue. So human physiology, like our human physiology, is actually designed to protect us against traumatization. So because of a wild, like if an animal is traumatized, he'll be taken for prey shortly after. So there's two phases of trauma. So there's the initial fight or flight response, body floods with cortisol, adrenal, and we run like hell, right? And then there's a point at which you may realize that you're in a corner, you can't get away. And so there's a phase called immobilization. And immobilization, you'll hear stories where people say, like, I literally just froze. Like, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't move. I couldn't talk. I couldn't, walk. And that is actually a survival technique. And so I encourage you to think back if you've had an immobilization process happen to you. And a lot of times the response later is like overanalyzing it and saying like, oh my gosh, I should have run, or I should have screamed, or why didn't I do that? And actually the best part about it is what you did was perfect because you survived. So because you survived that event, it was the human physiology taking over saying, right now, I'm going to immobilize you. And the reason for that immobilization in animals is they'll actually drop. Like, so they'll be running. They realize they can't outrun the cheetah. And all of a sudden they'll just become limp and immobilized and fall to the ground. And there's two parts of that process. One is the body surrendering, so that if it does die, the body's actually releasing a hormone where they won't be feeling pain, which is extremely cool and powerful. And two, the second thing is that oftentimes when a predator is coming after an animal, they will actually, and the animal goes limp, they'll put the animal by the bush and they'll go after its cubs. And so during that time, then the animal will actually start the process of the shaking. So it will shake, it will breathe, and it oftentimes can get up and escape because it's like playing dead. So that's something that will happen in the human body as well, is that there's actually a hormone response flooding your body for safety, and so that there's no more trauma experienced to you if you are to be captured or something like that. Is everybody following me with that so far? Awesome. Okay, so that's all I'm going to explain about those three processes. So we have the fight or flight response, and then we have immobilization, and we can get stuck in kindling, and we can heal it through quenching, through actually reactivating this process in our body. In trauma, though, there's a disassociation with the body. So this is the biggest part that you start to realize when you study like the difference between humans and animals, and you'll see the difference in children versus adults. Like as adults, we've been trained to like get up, move on, you're okay, like get up, like say you fall down, we are always super quick to, like if we see somebody fall, we're like, oh my gosh, let me help you up, right? Like we want to help them up right away. And actually we're not supposed to do that. Like we should actually let ourselves be on the ground for a minute, let ourselves process this. This is recorded, yes. Let ourselves process what's happening, shake, because you will be shaking, right? You can feel the hands trembling. And then at a certain point where you've analyzed that, like, oh, I'm actually okay, I'm not hurt, that was just really shocking to my body, your body will naturally take 3 deep breaths or a couple breaths, and you'll get up. And you'll be like, okay, I'm good now. And that is a really important thing for processing, because you're processing how your body is feeling and how it's receiving all of this. So even in children, there's a great section that that talks about like how we shouldn't actually like sweep up our children right away. Like we should actually let them go through their process of either shaking or crying or talking to them. So another part of what happens in trauma, when we experience, like you've heard of like outer body experiences. I definitely had an outer body experience in my first birth. I went through 2 days of really, really intense induced labor. Yes, there's a book. So we're going to send recap notes. There's a book, there's an Audible. You can listen to it, which I recommend more than reading because you're processing so much. So everything will be sent to you guys. But yeah, so I went through a really, really traumatic experience. I mean, several throughout my life. I had emergency reflex valve surgery as a young child. I had appendix removed surgery, and a lot of this, if you have gone under anesthesia, is actually one of the main trauma experiences in our body. So when we go under anesthesia, when in a state of fear, your body actually perceives it as death. And so there's 2 things that are happening, even though you can't feel. Like I just had a cesarean section. And even though you can't feel from the waist down, your body is still processing that you're being cut open. And so it actually is processing it as like an animal is ripping you open. That's our animalistic response. So although the mind forgets, the body does not. And that trauma is stored in that space of the body. So if you guys have heard or read The Body Keeps the Score, that's another great book and resource. But I would start with this book and then move to The Body Keeps the Score, just to not overwhelm yourself. And this has actually given me a lot of tools to start processing the trauma that I've experienced as well. So going into this cesarean section, I had this knowledge. So I was actually able to talk to my body and to say like, okay, we're going into surgery now and you're safe and you're going to experience, you know, being cut open. It's just called Healing Trauma by Peter Levine. and you're going to experience trauma right now, and you're going to come out of it, and your body is going to be completely safe. And so like I actually went through that process, and I started to cry when I started going through that process because my body was processing the fear. My hands started to shake. I was crying. My husband was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yep, I'm just processing right now." And I'm getting a little emotional even talking about it, so sorry. But yeah, so this is like important for us to process what we are experiencing. Otherwise, we get stuck in this kindled state. And then we show up in the world in that fight or flight. And so we show up not authentic or untrusting or fearful or defensive. And these are all personality behaviors that we'll experience by somebody that has been deeply traumatized. So if you know somebody in your life like that, they're like, "Oh, why are they so defensive? They're so frustrating." Have more compassion for them because they've experienced a lot of trauma. And that is why they're behaving that way, and they don't even realize it. So if you can hold space for them and hold love for them and maybe encourage them, if you're close to them, to analyze and look at processing their trauma, you can really help change their life. So yeah. So that is one of the main tools that you can do is talking through an experience that you've had, talking to your body through it, and then also analyzing your body, because what happens is you become disassociated with your body. You actually leave your body in some way because what you're experiencing physically is too traumatic. So I explained, when you go under anesthesia, even though when you're being cut open, your body actually processes as being ripped open by prey. Now, the second problem with anesthesia is it's a poison to the body, and the body is processing that as a death when the nerves go to sleep. So your body actually thinks that you've died because your nerves are not communicating or functioning. So you have to process this like a death, which is really crazy to think about. And for anybody that's gone into anesthesia while in a fear state, it's significantly worse and almost guaranteed to produce trauma in the body. So it's really important that we are advocates for our children if they ever have to go under anesthesia, that we talk to the doctor and say, "Please, like, let me get him calm before we go into before we put him under, let him process." So these are all things that we can do to actually eliminate the trauma from happening altogether. So this disassociation can happen when the experience is too traumatic. So I barely remember my birth of my first son. I went through a heavily induced labor. I was throwing up all over the floor. I was shaking. I pushed for like 4.5 hours. His heart stopped. I was rushed into an emergency cesarean, and they somehow did the epidural too high. And I don't even remember any of this. These are the notes that my lung was punctured and my lung collapsed. And so I was unconscious in his birth. And I woke up with tubes up my nose, down my throat. I didn't remember where I was. I thought I had been in a car accident. So that's a very common sign of disassociation. So this is a symptom. Like even a child or an adult saying, like, "Where am I?" Like they're very disoriented or disassociated, is because the body's left. You've left your body because it's just too much for you to handle. And so from that experience moving forward, I've always had a fear of birth. And, maybe has also resulted in the fact that I've had 3 repeat. I had just had my 4th cesarean, even though I tried to labor and my water broke. There is obviously a mental block of me giving birth. So that's just the one story I wanted to share. And I really worked hard this birth to try to process that trauma out. But it didn't end that way, and it's okay because it was beautiful because I was able to process the trauma in a different way before I went in. So that's all I want to share on the basics, because I don't want to overwhelm you any further. But I do want to go through like a small exercise and pass the mic off. So when you experience trauma or disassociation with your body, you're in a kindled state. So you're stuck in fear and you've disconnected from your body. And when we disconnect from our body, we can't process or heal what's happening internally. So this disassociation, we have to resolve that. And so the best way that we can resolve that is like when you're talking to a kid and they say like, "I have like a lump in my stomach." "Oh yeah? Like you have a lump in your stomach." You simply are repeating it back to the child that you're honoring what they're processing. Where else do you feel that? My knee is throbbing. Okay, your left knee is throbbing, or, you're just literally validating what they're experiencing in their body. And through that process, they're already releasing their trauma. And so we can do that with ourselves. And so one example that they give in the book is like if you have like a power shower head, or you can do this with your hand, but just identifying each part of your body. So like you could use the palm of your hand and like just slapping with a weak wrist on your forearm, like, this is my forearm. This is my forearm on my body. I am connected with my forearm. And it sounds silly, but you're going to go through each part of your body because you're literally creating reconnection. So you're reversing the disassociation that's happened through trauma. So now we're reconnecting with each part of our body that we may have disassociated with, which doesn't allow us to process or heal that part of our body. And trauma is stored in our tissues, in our cells, in our organs, and it affects our health. You have guilt and grief in the kidneys, you have anger in the liver. We have so much trauma that is stored in the physical body that can cause cancer, can cause autoimmune, can cause all sorts of mental disorders. And so understanding that we need to reconnect with our bodies on the very basic physical level is the first step. So creating association with your body. And this works for past traumas. Yeah, so that's kind of the point of this whole book is like, I really encourage you guys download it on Audible if you don't have it. Reading it just doesn't do, I read it first and then I was like, duh, it's on Audible. It was like, oh my gosh, because it was like really hard to like read and then try to do the exercise. So it was really beneficial to have him walk you through the exercise. And I've actually done it with my partner, my husband, because you can't be alone, which actually has brought us really, really close together. So if you have a life partner, or you have a best friend, or you have a mom, anyone that you could really process this with, I do not recommend processing trauma alone, even the association with the body, because you don't know what's going to come up in a certain area. Like once I got to my C-section scar, like my abdomen, I started trembling. My whole body was shaking. And so trauma was being released from that part that has been stored in my abdomen. And so that's the first exercise that you can start to do with somebody. You can do small amounts if you're without somebody, in the sense of like, say you're speaking to somebody. Like when I'm talking to someone, I actually try to always keep energy on one part of my body. Like right now, my sensation's on my left knee, and it's keeping me in my body versus leaving and being in my head and out of that. So that's something simple that you can do to just start creating association. Like, okay, my energy's on my left knee, now it's on my right ankle. So I'm really connected with my body right now. And when you experience any sort of trauma, what I recommend, like even if it's like you had to slam on your brakes, right? All of a sudden you're in that fight or flight response, you're shaking, pull over, let yourself process what just happened. Let yourself shake, let yourself take deep breaths, let yourself say, I feel this in my chest right now. I feel this in my belly right now. And when you go into a fight or flight response, it's the same response that's happened to you every time you've gotten scared. So that's the beautiful opportunity of allowing this to release, is at the same time your body is releasing old trauma, old energy simultaneously that's been stored. So when you get into that similar response, you can actually invite your body to release more of it. There are physical exercises that you can get into that will start the shaking process for you. And we did some of that in Bali. Carrie and I did. It was super weird. It was like, what's happening? But it works. And so I'm not going to go deep into any of those exercises. I think that's all I'm going to share with you for now. I want to pass it over to the other ladies. And yeah, thanks so much for your time.
Beautiful. Thank you, Carrie, for sharing your story and sharing for your passion for this subject. Those are incredible resources to check out, which I highly encourage doing. I want to speak to a little bit more deeply two common mechanisms of self-protection that people often experience. So the first one, if people have experienced trauma or perceived trauma, they can become drawn inwardly into our own kind of self-protecting cocoon, which in which people are trying to buffer or protect themselves from what can feel like an overstimulating or an overwhelming world. And this is due to an active or a highly sensitive nervous system. So it can sometimes feel unsafe to connect to one's surroundings or to others. So this is why a person retreats deeper and deeper inward for this feeling of comfort or safety. Another self-protecting mechanism that is common is, as Carrie was speaking to, is a person can feel disconnected or disassociated from their body. Sometimes when a person experiences trauma that hasn't been processed, as Carrie was saying, they can project themselves or their awareness out of their body because, again, they're not feeling safe in that environment or in that situation or in their body. And this is usually an unconscious act. And many times people don't realize, as Carrie was saying, that they have disassociated from their body. Again, it's a form of self-protection. And this can make it difficult to feel present, to feel grounded, to feel in our body, to be aware of our surroundings, or to be able to connect with the people around us. So in both of these instances, there is a process of retraining ourselves to feel safe in our environment and to feel safe in our bodies. So a great way to start this process is to tune into your 5 senses. So you'll want to put yourself in a safe and a calming environment, preferably in nature, to do these exercises. But I just want to walk you through briefly ways to really connect. The first one is being sound. So invite yourself to reconnect to the world around you by tuning into the sounds around you. Listen to the birds. How far, how close do they sound away from you? Are there insects chirping? Listen to the traveling creek or the ocean and out. And then just take them all through your sense of sound. That is a little.
You're on mute, Rita.
Rita, you got to unmute yourself. Sorry.
Thanks. Okay. So that's just the first one, is getting back into our bodies and into our environment by tuning into the sounds around us, and hearing into all the layers of what's happening around you. And again, that's best practiced in a really calm, safe environment, especially in nature. The next one is sight. So taking in all the colors and textures around you, taking in your world through observation. Are there flowers around you? What is the color palette of the landscape? Are there clouds in the sky? Are there ants crawling in the dirt? And just really watch and observe and take in your surroundings through that sense of sight. The next is touch. Really tuning into your environment. Touch the trees, touch the earth, touch the grass, plant seeds in the garden. Get into your body through that physical sense of touch. Even if you're gently touching your wrist, this is a sensitive spot that really allows you to come back into your body and also bring that sensation of awareness back into our own bodies. Also practicing self-care, brushing your hair, taking a bubble bath, massaging your feet, dry brushing is a really good one. And then putting oil on your whole body. Alternatively, it's really good to get into kinesthetic movement or action. So dancing or running or playing at the park. It doesn't matter if you're a kid or an adult. It's incredibly helpful to continue to play. Go to a yoga class, or also gentle exercise really helps to regulate that nervous system. Finally, take in your environment through smell. So aromatherapy is really wonderful. Tuning into your foods, like mangoes have an incredible smell, spices, and really just take in your world around you through that sense of smell. You can go on a hike after it rains and really take in the sense of all of the different foliage and the flowers and the trees. Taste. Mary is going to go over a really neat exercise with this, but basically you're just exploring the tone and the depth of food, which part it hits your tongue. So just being more aware as you're eating, and how this impacts your palate and how this impacts the senses in your body and how you feel from it. So In summary, it's really important to practice these tools of awareness to regulate our nervous systems daily. So when moments of stress do arise, we've already created these habits. So we kind of fall back into this process of self-regulation by tuning into our five senses, by tuning into our environment, by tuning into our bodies. And this is going to really help us in stressful moments so that we can fall back on those self-regulation habits. Next, I really want to tune into the nervous system and adrenal health. These two systems of the body are really important to support after stress or trauma because these two systems take the hardest hit from stress or trauma. So it can take up to a couple of years to heal the nervous system, to heal your adrenals. It's really important to just work with your healthcare provider as well in conjunction with an herbalist or detox specialist so that we can support you in those nutritional and herbal protocols to support those two systems. Supporting your adrenals and your nervous system really help the body to adapt and cope, to stress, and also really cope with stress or trauma. And a strong nervous system allows us to be in stressful circumstances while maintaining our inner calm, that inner peace. And a healthy nervous system is so crucial for our overall health. It's and a great way to just really regulate that nervous system on the spot is to tune into your breath and really encourage conscious breathing and slow, deep breathing, being aware of your inhalation and your exhalation, slowing that breath down. I next want to speak to the importance of an alkaline diet when really supporting ourselves in this way. The subject's incredibly important because physical and emotional trauma gets stored in our bodies at the cellular level, as Carrie was speaking to. So trauma has no understanding of time. An incident could have happened 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, but to the person who experienced it, it can feel like it happened yesterday or 5 minutes ago. And this is because we store that trauma in our bodies. So after I had experienced, a near-death car accident, I had stored that physical trauma in my body. And it didn't matter how many massages I got or how much yoga I did. My body would resort to those self-protecting mechanisms of holding patterns. And my right shoulder was higher than my left, and I couldn't walk or dance without, extreme pain in my left leg. And my spine was pulled 1.5 inches over to the left, and the right spine was concaved and sunken in because there was nothing for the muscles to attach to because the transverse processes were broken off. And then the left side of my spine had to take on the whole burden of doing all the work. So it was excessively strong and really painfully tight. And this left a 2-inch difference of that right side being really sunken in and that left side really sticking out in my spine because it was trying to balance, it was just working in the ways that it could. And everything was really painful. And this pain lasted for 10 years before I really learned how to release it through getting into an alkaline state in my body through food and working through the different systems of the body with herbalism. And so I also held this trauma in my body. My nervous system was highly sensitive to my surroundings. Loud noises made me feel like my nervous system was just like shattering or breaking. It felt equally as exhausting and painful as the physical pain. So when the body becomes alkaline, what we're supporting is we're supporting the different systems through herbs, physical holding patterns, and tissues that were frozen in place or that felt like concrete begin to relax and soften and release. And when we support the process of kidney filtration, the body is able to let go of damaged cells and rebuild healthy tissues. So that alkaline environment from alkaline foods is also beginning to change the chemistry of the body. And in an alkaline environment, the cells are oxygenated, cellular waste are released out of the body via that kidney filtration, and then tissues are able to repair. And in that alkaline environment, nutrients are able to be absorbed, allowing for healthy cellular function to happen. So just as that alkalinity really supports that process of releasing trauma at the physical level, at the tissue level, at the cellular level, it also really helps to release it at an emotional level, releasing any suppressed emotions that are stored at that cellular level. It's really important to do that work, though, with a trauma specialist or a therapist in conjunction with a detox specialist to move through any suppressed memories or emotions that come up. This isn't easy work. It definitely requires feeling and experiencing all of the uncomfortable emotions and the feelings associated with suppressed memories or traumas, as these emotions are released from the body, coming from like a suppressed state, a chronic state to a subacute to acute, just really releasing through the body. But it's important to make sure that you seek professional support and guidance when doing this work. And through these practices, I've been able to not only find balance in my body and my spine is completely balanced, my physical body is aligned, but also freedom in my emotional well-being. So I think supporting my nervous system and my adrenals will be a lifelong practice in order to maintain balance in my life, but really incorporating these goals of connecting to our environment, connecting to our surroundings, connecting to getting alkaline and supporting different systems of the body, we're able to release that stored trauma, not only at the cellular level, but at that emotional level. I'm going to pass this off to Carrie next.
Carrie Tidwell, are you?
All right. Yep. Sorry, I was just handing off the baby. Thank you, Rita, for sharing that so much. Those are amazing, helpful tips, and I can speak a little on experience of getting my body alkaline, and I'll share a little bit of a story that I went through. And first, I want to share that many of us have experienced some sort of trauma that maybe we remember, but there are certain things that maybe we don't remember, and it can stem from all the way into utero and in the womb. If our mom was going through something stressful or traumatic, and then as babies, if we're not comforted or not feeling safe in the world. So certain things can happen throughout our lives that we might not even remember that we're holding on to. And I believe even generational trauma is a thing. So generation after generation, if there's certain traumatic events happening, we hold those patterns or those thought or belief systems in our body, and they can manifest as we're older and not realize, like, why do we get triggered like that, or why does this keep coming up, or why am I so sad, or why am I angry easy, or there's all these different ways it can manifest, and it's different for everybody. And so as we get older, we can start to recognize maybe certain patterns throughout our life. And I'm just wanted to make that or give you that awareness that it could be even something you might not remember. And I'm going to share a story of something that I went through and kind of my journey through it, and hope that maybe it can shine light on something you've gone through or are going through, to give you hope that you can create a more of a healing with that part of you that went through that. And so about 19 years ago, I was living at my mom's house, and her husband woke me up and was like, "We're going to your dad's. Your mom is at your dad's house." And I was like, "What? My mom's never at my dad's house. My parents were divorced." And so I was like, something's happening. So I knew something wasn't good. And I called my sister Kelly like over and over to like figure out what's happening. Like, why is mom there? Like, something major happened. I just don't know what it was. Well, she didn't answer. And I remember that car ride there, I like wanted to know, and I didn't want to know all at once of what had happened. And when I got to my dad's house, my family shared the news that my sister got in a car accident and she had passed away. And I was like immediately shocked. So when they talk about like your body shuts down or that's like how I was. I was shocked. I was in denial, like major denial. I had never lost anybody close to me before, and sorry. That was like probably one of the most challenging mornings I've ever had. to lose someone that I was so close to. And I went through this period. The story gets better, so I don't want to keep you in the sad space. As I moved through that, and I remember going to the wake, and I take a while to process things. So I was in that space of denial and wanting to like comfort everybody else at the wake and tell everyone else it's okay. And then after that, I went through this huge phase of like, I couldn't stop crying. I started to feel, and I didn't like the feeling, and I couldn't talk to my family members about it because I didn't want to bring up like more sadness or more hurt, because they all were suffering and going through their own process of dealing with it. And so then I just got into this self-destructive numbing pattern. So I ended up going out a lot, and I started drinking heavily, and then I would come home and I would eat, and so I didn't have to feel, I didn't want to feel, and stuff and suppress, and I would do it over again. And so I kept doing that over and over again. And I was just in a really sad, dark place with not really wanting to share what I was going through because I didn't want to bring anyone else down. And I vividly remember I was with my cousin at a park, and I looked up and a plane came over, and at that moment I was like, I don't even care if a bomb came and killed me. Like, I was at the like lowest moment. I didn't even care if I lived. And shortly after that, I got this like glimmer of hope, of this intuitive, like something in me, something was talking inside of me that said, you can't do this. Like, you have to step out of this pattern, this cycle. You can't stay in this place, because if you die, that's another daughter lost, that's another sibling lost, and another friend lost, and that doesn't fix anything. And so through that, I followed that voice to guide me to where I wanted to go next. And it was to figure out, like, why am I here? What's my purpose? If I'm born, I must be here for a reason, and I should figure that out. And I was going to move either to California or Florida at the time, because I was 19. I was going to go to school. And my brother ended up coming to me and saying he was dealing with some substance abuse and wanted help. And then my focus shift to want to help him and get him out of that place. So sometimes when we get out of our own sad story and help somebody else, it can help ourselves as well. And so, to make a long story short, we ended up moving to Florida. He was 14 at the time, or 15. He was just in high school. And this was before GPS. So I don't even know how I got around. I figured it out. This is before we had maps on our phones. And I was his legal guardian. I had to figure out how to now take care of him in another state. And what I did was, I knew I had to get my body healthy. So I obviously stopped going out, stopped drinking. I had to like break that cycle, that pattern, and remove myself from that situation. And I was able to do that by taking care of my body in the best way I knew how. So I started exercising. I started eating what I thought was healthy at the time, and just getting out of that and having that intention of trying to figure out what my purpose and passion is. And I've been on that journey ever since that situation. And I noticed throughout my life certain patterns that I would do, and I would stuff and suppress when I was going through things. So with my parents' divorce, I stuffed with food to not feel. And I noticed that throughout my life, when I'd have certain stressful situations, I had this pattern of using that to numb out. And everyone has their own thing, whether it's drugs, alcohol, food, porn, different, excessive TV watching to numb out. Like, it can be manifest in different ways for different people. My drug of choice was food to suppress, to not feel. And I always went back to the body to like figure out how to get through or move past something, and to get better to be the best version of myself. And it wasn't until 5 years ago that I learned the regenerative healing, and that I was really able to do some major transformation on such a deep level, because we can hold these traumas and patterns in our body in a physical way that cause obstructions to the flow of our physical body through our blood, nerve, and lymph system, through our emotions. So mentally, emotionally, our thoughts, and spiritually, all of it's connected. And as I started to remove these obstructions, at a deeper level, like Rita was talking about, opening up the kidneys, alkalizing, hydrating, I was able to feel and experience things at a deeper level. I was able to have forgiveness. I didn't even know I had issues with forgiveness with my dad. And so certain things came up that were really helpful for me for my own journey and my own healing on a deeper level. And I feel through my sister's death, she really taught me how to live. And so I can take that experience that was super traumatic, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't have the tools. I didn't know how to help it. And I've always went back to the body to like cleanse or alkalize or like get to the root in that way that I knew how. And with bringing, fast forward to today, with all of this like collective things getting stirred up with the coronavirus and the death of George Floyd, and racism and food injustice and economic injustice and all these things coming up, it can just bring up a lot of traumatic stuff for us as a collective. And I've noticed myself falling into that like downward spiral of like overwhelm of what can I do. And I always go back to, it starts with yourself and taking the best care of yourself so you can show up in the way that you are meant to show up, and the gifts that you are given to have to share in the world. And so there's a book called The Mucusless Diet Healing System, and Professor Arnold Ehret has a simple formula that I love, that is V equals P minus O, which is vitality equals power minus obstruction. And when we can remove these obstructions from the body, we allow everything to flow more freely. It's almost like this like weight is lifted off when we can truly forgive, when we can get to the root of things in a beautiful way. And it always starts with yourself. You can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond to those situations. And another thing I wanted to share is Louise Hay has this 40-minute meditation. And just like we have these programs that run in our mind. So I used to have this program of poor me. My parents got divorced. I didn't have my mom when I needed her. My dad was angry all the time. I didn't have guidance or support when I needed it, or love or affection. And then my sister died. And so I've had this story of poor me and this victim of that just kept repeating. And I had to get out of that cycle and realize it's not what happens to me, it's what I do with it. And so now I look at those as all lessons, and that was part of my journey to make me who I am, to show up in the way that I can, to maybe shed light for somebody else on that path. And so back to Louise Hay, she has a 40-minute meditation that you can help like reprogram the mind. So we can have these programs running, and it can stem from childhood or passed down belief systems, and to like reprogram the mind that the world is a safe place. And in all these, and one thing in her video that stuck out to me was, if you look at everybody as the 4 or 5-year-old child, everybody just wants love and to be seen and heard and affection and attention. And I extend like this big virtual loving hug to every 4 or 5-year-old you as a child. And now if you're experiencing trauma, just like that love, that you are supported, you are loved, you are seen. And what a beautiful way that we can connect here together virtually like this to share and help each other out. And I feel like when we can come together and show up in the best way we can, and we're feeling good, and we remove these obstructions or get support we need when we need it, we can show up in the best way that we can. And I'm honored to share with these ladies transformations, health transformations, and we put together 30-day programs to really help people in this way. And this is something it's something to revisit. And so I'm doing my own deeper dive now that I'm not nursing, just to bring my body and my level of awareness and helpfulness to my next level. And so we're all at different places, and we can all just focus on ourselves and getting ourselves to our next best level. And so thank you all for being here. It's a beautiful way to be able to share and connect. And Mary Beth is going to be sharing about creating more healthy relationships with food, which is something I've been able to do when I go into healing at a cellular level, and not just for like weight loss or not just for one thing, but when you start to remove these obstructions, beautiful things start to fall in place in more ways than you could ever imagine. And so grateful for this awareness and knowledge, and I'm looking forward to hearing Mary Beth has to say. So thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. I so appreciate you sharing your story, and everyone here who shared information. I just want to take a minute to everybody just take a deep breath and exhale, because there was so much valuable information shared. And I know for me, even when I begin to speak of trauma, I start to feel something in my body. And so I just want everyone to really honor our speakers today and honor this information and honor the feelings you might be feeling as well, because trauma is such a vast subject, and there's many ways we can talk about how to heal it and many different tools. And one of the ways I specifically wanted to speak to today is how to help heal trauma through our relationship with food, because that's something we do every single day, up to 3 times a day, is eat. And if we can create a ceremony and a process around our eating habits, that can help create a new patterning of new stories and new cellular healing, like we've been talking about, and really learning to love eating healthy and love eating alkaline, because that will help us to excrete these traumas that get stored in our bodies. We have over 100 trillion cells, and each cell holds memory and it can hold trauma. All of our organs are made up of these cells. And so when we start to regenerate and detoxify and cleanse and alkalize our cells and oxygenate them, we can actually start to release these traumas and start to create new stories. And one of the best ways to start, that I think, is with a gratitude practice. First and foremost, for healing trauma, getting to that place where you can look at your traumas and be grateful for the experience, as hard as it was, as devastating it was, as scary as it was. If you can come to that place of finding some ounce of gratitude for the lessons you've learned, for the strength that it gave you, that is where we can move beyond. And it's the same thing with our food. When we're consuming our food, when we can find a space of gratitude for the nourishment it's giving us, for the cleansing it's giving us, for, the safety it's providing for us, then we can really get to that next level of health and healing and release. So one little ritual that I do when I'm eating is I take my food in front of me and I say, I'm so grateful to be eating blank because it is giving me blank. So for instance, I'm so grateful to be eating these because I know that they're strengthening my blood and oxygenating my cells and helping me to release trauma in that oxygenation. So you can also do that with your traumatic experiences. I am so grateful for this traumatic experience I had, because it's now allowing me to crawl out of the dark hole I was in, or, see the light on the other side, or whatever that may be. So creating that ritual of before every meal, when you wake up, having this gratitude around your eating practices as well as your traumas. And another thing that I love to do before I'm eating is just sit in peace for a moment with my plate of food and just say this prayer of, may all be fed, may all be healed, may all be loved. I am fed, I am healed, I am loved. So this is a practice you can do with or without food, but it's helpful to have something physical in front of you to practice it with. But it's also something, the more you repeat it and the more you really feel that on a cellular level, the more we can release into a space of safety and letting go of these traumas. Another really great technique, like Rita was talking about, healing trauma through our senses, is especially with your food, when your food is in front of you, really appreciating the smells, taking a moment to smell the food, acknowledge the colors. One of my favorite mindfulness practices is if you take a raisin and it can be up to a 30-minute practice where you take 30 minutes to eat one raisin. And it's really about learning into those subtleties of the body, of taking the raisin into your hand, closing your eyes and just feeling it, feeling the textures, how it feels on your hands, taking 5 minutes to do that, then bringing it up to your nose and smelling it and seeing what kind of sensations arise in the body as you smell that. And then after you've taken some time to do that, maybe 5 minutes, put it into the mouth. And before you even begin chewing, start to feel what it's like on your tongue. How does it feel on the roof of your mouth? What does it feel like on your teeth? And then as you begin chewing, also acknowledge it.
those sensations. And then you can even take it deeper into when you begin swallowing slow. What is that doing? What kind of emotions is it bringing? So this practice, even though it's with a raisin, it can actually be a deep, deep healing of traumatic experiences too, because if we learn to feel into our traumatic experiences, feel what it's creating in our bodies and our thoughts and our stories and our minds, and really sink into that depth and that level of connection with it, that's where we can ultimately come to a place of safety on the other side. So another great thing to do when you're eating is just try to eat slowly and eat in a relaxed environment. This is going to help your traumas in your body as well as your nervous system to just feel safe and to feel like you have the time and the space to process not only the food you're digesting, but to process the thoughts and the emotions that you're digesting. And then another great practice for helping to cleanse and alkalize and regenerate the cells of the body and the trauma, as well as developing healthy food practices, is eating early in the day. So finishing your dinner maybe around 6 o'clock. Let's say you go to bed at 10, giving that window of 2 to 6 hours for your body to digest food before you sleep, because really the most healing happens when we sleep. And if our body is focusing on digesting that whole time, like if you eat right at 10 o'clock and then try to sleep, your body for the majority of your sleep time is going to be actually just focusing on digesting. Versus if you give your body that time and that space, your body can actually go into deep healing and regeneration mode, where you're actually like getting to those deep cellular levels of trauma and processing them as you sleep, processing them through your dreams. So eating early can be a really good habit to get into. And then, even having a window of time where it's 12 to 16 hours where you haven't consumed any food. You eat early and maybe wake up and start your morning slow. Again, your body can go into that deeper state of healing and that deeper state of regeneration for your cellular health. The other thing is, just like with food and thoughts, is trying not to label our traumas as good or bad, or our food as good or bad. Just kind of taking it for what it is. And one thing that I really like to focus on more is when I'm about to consume a food, whether I'm thinking, oh, this is good or bad, more it's how do I want this to make me feel? If I'm going to eat a green shake, I know afterwards I'm going to feel energized and fresh and free and just lifted up, versus I know if I go eat a heavily cooked and processed meal afterwards, I just feel kind of lethargic and ugh. And it's the same with healing traumas. Before we really get into that traumatic experience, a traumatic response, just acknowledging, taking a breath, how do I feel on the other side of this? And keeping that pinned inside, really, with the process moving quicker and actually being able to release quicker. And then same with your food. There's many eating disorders out there that can be related to as a traumatic experience as well. And so when we get into that labeling, that can kind of lead to more and more eating disorders. So if we can really get in a good space of how do I want to feel? And I love what Carrie was saying about the vitality and power. Vitality plus power minus objections really equals that freedom in the body. Obstruction, sorry. And then again, so thinking about your long-term goals. And then this is my favorite thing. And just as Carrie Drinkwine talked about, eating in company or in community. There's a quote out there that it's not actually about the food that you're eating, but it's about the company in which you're consuming it with. So it's the same thing with going through a traumatic experience. Don't try to do it alone. Find your support, find your professional support, find people who you can relate to, and process these things together, because it's really not about the tools that we're using, but it's about the community that we're able to bring that forward to, and the experiences we're able to share, and how we learn from each other. So with food too, I highly encourage eating family meals, eating together, eating in laughter, eating in happiness, eating in gratitude can really shift that relationship with food and really help to heal on that deep cellular level of your body feeling safe and happy and able to release. And then lastly, well, that connection with your food, just like we want to have a connection with our emotions and our feelings. One thing that we can really do to start healing our relationships with food and healing our traumas is having a relationship with your food. Like before you eat it, think about, hey, where did this food come from? Who was the farmer that might have grown this? Where did that seed come from? And one way to do that, is go to your local farmers market, start conversating with farmers, have that actual interaction, volunteer at a farm, get your hands in the soil. This can be extremely healing process for healing traumas. It's just getting into nature, like Rita was talking about, getting your hands in the soil, getting that connectivity to start having those sensations relate back into your body. So growing a garden, if you're able, is a really healing process. And I know there's actually a lot of trauma facilities that one of their primary tools besides meditation and eating healthy is like growing a garden, being out there, connecting with the plants, just being with the planet and our surroundings. And then another fun thing to do is cook mindfully. Start exploring different types of food, different types of recipe books, different types of ways of eating, and setting aside that time for me, cooking is one of my times when I really process. So for other people, it might be driving. I know a lot of people process when they're driving. And for me, I set aside sacred time to really get excited about creating healthy meals and cooking with my family, and also processing my thoughts and my emotions for the day, and just having that time and that space to be working with my physical food as well as processing my emotions at the same time. And so with all that being said, like Carrie Tidwell was saying, we as a collective, we create these 30-day transformation support groups. And the main focus is on alkaline eating and nourishing ourselves deeply so that we can start to release even on emotional levels and physical and mental levels. And we create this container of support, because I think one of the most important things that Carrie Drinkwine touched on is just having support to be able to heal on a physical level and an emotional and a mental level. So we create these 30-day transformation groups where we lead you through a guided program of alkaline eating, deep nourishing eating. We provide resources on, supporting the different organ systems of the body, the nervous system, and all of these as you're detoxifying the body and cleansing the cellular waste out of the body so you can cleanse the traumas as well. So if that's something that anyone would be interested in, we are going to send a follow-up email with a way that you can get in touch with each of us directly, and we can send you more information on our 30-day support container that we do to really just start getting that foundational nutrition level taken care of so that we can really dig in deeper. One of the things that in my yoga practice that I really love studying is the sheaths. And it's basically talking about how healing is a process. And we really start with that outer layer of the onion, and that's the physical. So we got to start with this physical body, what we're putting into this body. And then as we start to cleanse and nourish and detoxify, we can start peeling away that onion layer, and we can move into that emotional body. Then we can move into the organs and the nervous system. And then we can continue to move deeper and deeper into that heart space where we really find, like Carrie Tidwell was talking about, who we are and our purpose. If you take away all the traumas and all the, judgments and comparisons and all of that stuff, who are we here? And that's so much of what we're doing and what our regenerative detoxification is about. It's not just about the food we're putting in our bodies, but it's about getting to this space here. And we have to do it using many different tools. So if that's a process that you would like support on and learning more about, again, we'll send an email out with the details. And we have an ongoing transformation support group if healing trauma through eating and alkalinity is something that you really want to explore more. So that's what I have to share today. Thank you all for taking your time for being here. I want to give gratitude to the speakers again, and we might stay on for a little bit for question and answer if you guys have some more questions coming up, but thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks,